Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what we want to do on the show. We want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about positivity, about the things that are going on in the world that are going to lead you to the promised land. I know, that sounds interesting, right? Well, let me tell you, my guest today is Dr. Joshua Simon, and we're talking Positively 4th Street, a baby boomer's guide to the promised land. Well, historical events, ideas, words, and numbers are connected to one another, not by chance, but in a way that lies below the surface. Dr. Simon offers real solutions to perhaps the two most common problems: thinking that you are not good enough and procrastination. Yep, I said the P word, procrastination. And if that's something that you know that you need to work with, then you're definitely going to be interested in listening to today's show. So go on, pull up a chair, get your coffee or your tea, and settle in with us this morning. Let's give now you guys know I call everybody by their first name. Let's give Dr. Joshua the microphone. Good morning, Dr. Joshua. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Angela. It's a pleasure to join you.
I am so excited to be able to tell our listeners a little bit more about you and to be able to discuss this book. So if you will, I'm just going to read off your bio, and then I want to ask you, but who are you in your own words? But you have such a great bio, so I don't want to leave that out. So listeners, Dr. Joshua Simon is an MD and an EDD. He is a double board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. He renders services in Tucson, Arizona. Prior to entering Michigan State University for medical school, Dr. Simon was an assistant professor of exercise psychology at Columbia University, where he received his Doctor of Education degree. He's published articles in scientific journals and most recently has provided continuing medical education for his fellow physicians on emotional intelligence and self-esteem. Dr. Simon is married with 2 children. Now that is quite a bio, and I'm so glad that you have the education to follow up what you're about to share today. But I want to ask you, who are you? Who are you in your day-to-day life?
I try to be calm and collected. Mm-hmm. I work with patients who have difficulty coping with life. I am a psychiatrist, mm-hmm. and I try to present an outlook on life that's positive, that they can pick up on and inculcate into their own lives. Mm-hmm. I've come from a Jewish background, but my parents were not religious.
Okay.
But at age 18, I was brought to Jesus Christ almost by accident, and it has had a lasting effect on my life.
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting all into itself. Oh, my goodness. Now, you have written a book entitled Positively 4th Street. I love that, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land. That is such a wonderful title. And your book's foundation is based on the teachings of several prophets or significant religious beings, such as Moses, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad. What were the foundations of your religious beliefs as far as your interaction with these known figures?
Well, as I said before, I was raised in an atheist home of Jewish heritage. Mm-hmm. And when I say atheist, I mean devoutly atheist. In my family, when a person died, they were as dead as the ant you just stepped on. Mm-hmm. And if an ant has no afterlife, then neither do we. Okay. That's how I was raised. My when my dad was sent off to war to fight the Nazis in World War II, my mom didn't pray. And when my dad was faced with any enemy fire, he didn't pray. It was not in their vocabulary or in their consciousness. But all that changed. And that changed when I entered college and I met a friend who happened to be a son of a minister. I should say I made a friend, happened to be the son of a minister, and he asked me one day if I was interested in hearing some people talk about God. And I said, okay. I thought this was going to be an intellectual discussion. They would tell me why they believe, and I would tell them why I don't believe, and see what happens. Well, that's not what happened. So a knock comes on the door. I'm in my friend's room, and these two young men come in, very clean cut. I'm looking like a typical 18-year-old, long hair, dressed in jeans, probably a T-shirt. Probably people would typecast me as a hippie from the Broadway show Hair with the way I was looking that day. And before anything was said other than shaking hands and introducing ourselves, these two young men just asked me, how would you like to have Jesus Christ come into my life? And without a pause, without even a second thought, I just said, yes, okay. And then they asked me to repeat words about Jesus being our Lord and guiding light. And as I repeated those words, which I did, I felt something enter my body, something down in my near my thighs, and just traveled up my body to my head. And it was nothing that I ever experienced before. Nothing. I didn't anticipate anything happening, but it happened. And later, if I'm not mistaken, what I've been told is that that was the Holy Spirit entering me and Jesus becoming a part of my life at that moment. And that's what happened. Now, that's at age 18. So I had no previous indoctrination as to what it means to be Christian. No one ever explained to me anything about Christian dogma. And I have this experience. 10, 15 minutes later pass, these gentlemen leave, and there I am. I know that God exists. But that's what I know. I don't know much more. I don't know what that means, that you know that God exists. How is that going to affect my life? How is that going to change anything? Because I basically went about my life no different than before, other than knowing there is a God. I'm not an atheist anymore. What was unusual at the time was these gentlemen, as it turned out, were from Campus Crusades for Christ. This is back in probably around January or February of 1970, somewhere in that time frame. And they thought that the gentleman who introduced me to them, who was a churchgoer, would just take me to church. And that's what they expected would happen. Well, it turned out 1970, my friend is a young black man from Cleveland. His father's a minister there, and I'm a young white man from Great Neck, Long Island. And he attended an all-black church. And he didn't feel comfortable, didn't invite me to attend church with him. And so following this experience, I didn't go to church. No one gave me a Bible to read. No one gave me anything to study about what the Bible said about what a relationship with Jesus is about. Right. So I basically had this relationship going on with Jesus, as I put it, a direct relationship. There was no intervening anything, no intervening ideas that others have expressed about what it means to have a relationship. It was just between me and Jesus. And not much happened, which is kind of funny, but not much happened until I fell in love, which is about 2 years later. And when I fell in love, this is kind of like one of the critical moments in my life when I look back on it is that I had fallen in love, but I didn't fall in love right away. I had a girlfriend. I'm 20 years old in college, and as I look back, I realized I was insecure, and I wasn't sure that I wanted the world to know this was my girlfriend. I didn't know that having this girl people would look up to me because this is my girlfriend. You can see how superficial I am. You can see how insecure I am at that time in my life. And then a moment came when my girlfriend was hugging and kissing me in the cafeteria, and it was crowded, and I said to her, "This is not the time or the place." And it was not the time or the place because this would let everybody know this is my girlfriend, and I wasn't ready to share that. And she obviously was upset by my statement, and I started to think, if I'm going to break up with her because I'm not sure this is the right relationship for me, it would be better if I tell her now rather than later.
Right.
At which point I started to think more deeply about my relationship. And I don't have proof of this, but this is where I think Jesus first started to communicate with me, because at that moment I decided for some reason I was going to block out all thoughts that I thought others might have about her name was Elizabeth, about Elizabeth being my girlfriend. And I should rely just on what I think. It should be my decision. What do I think and feel? Not what others are thinking and feeling. And at that point is when I realized, when I paused and I blocked out all those thoughts about what I think others might be thinking, that's when I realized I cared very much about her and wanted her to be happy and wanted to see her have a beautiful life. And at that moment, I stopped thinking about what she could be doing for me in terms of what impression it's going to make to the world. And I thought about what could I do for her. And I guess that's what a relationship with Jesus is about what you can do for others, and just let everything else happen. Don't worry about. Be of service to other people. Be kind, be considerate. Treat others the way you would like to be treated, and things will work out for yourself.
Well, definitely. Well, Dr. Joshua, it is time for us to get ready to go to break, and I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to mention the title of your book one more time and remind our listeners where can they pick up a copy of your book.
Thank you. Once again, the title is Positively 4th Street, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land by Joshua Simon, MD, and it can be found on Amazon.com.
Alrighty, listeners, you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this.
Smell Good Spa for the women who are making a conscientious change in their personal care products. Specializing in signature fragrance oils, hand-dipped incense, and wholesome bath and body and personal care products. Smell Good Spa. Use code HELLO25 for 25% off your order. Live good, feel good, smell good wholesomely. SmellGoodSpa.com.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Dr. Joshua Simon, and we are talking about his book, Positively 4th Street, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land. That's right. We are talking positivity today. There's two things that we're going to touch on, making sure that you understand that, yes, you are good enough. And let's not fall victim to procrastination. There's so many things in our world today that point us in the right direction. Are we aware of them? Are we seeing the signs? And how is God speaking to us? So, Dr. Joshua, one of the people that you were talking about in your life is this woman named Elizabeth. So she's now in your life. You're trying to make a decision if you are going to allow the world to persuade you in how you feel about her, or if you're going to kind of stand up for your own feelings and share that out. You're at this crossroad. What happened to your relationship with Elizabeth?
So I ended up standing up for myself, feeling confident that I have a bearing about what it means to be myself, what it means to be a caring human being, and I was going to rely on myself to decide whether I am going to continue in this relationship with Elizabeth or not, and I decided to continue in it. I started to pay far more attention to her feelings. I was far more attentive to her than I was before that moment when I was thinking about breaking up with her. And she transformed into the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She was attractive to begin with, but after I started caring about her, it just brightened up everything. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love. I realized I was in love. I realized that there was something about this relationship that really mattered and was important. And about 5 or 6 weeks later, Elizabeth comes to me and says, "We need to talk."
Uh-oh.
That's right, uh-oh. And she says to me, "My feelings for you have changed." And she breaks up with me. Oh. Okay. Now, I'm devastated. Mm-hmm. Not because I was in love with her, not because I learned to care about her. I was devastated because you don't get over your insecurities quickly or immediately. Mm-hmm. That this relationship still was a bridge for me to think I was good enough. Because now I have the most beautiful woman in the world as my girlfriend. How could I ever doubt that I was ever good enough? Right. Well, mm-hmm. So when she breaks up with me, I don't have that rationalization that I could justify. I must be okay, really? I mean, look who's my girlfriend. I don't have that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm crushed. Okay? I'm crushed. And it takes me quite a lot of time to try and figure out what was going on. And here's the interesting thing, I was curious. I wanted to know why I was crushed. I wanted to know why I felt the way I did. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to hide from it. I didn't want to distract myself from it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to learn from it. And what did I learn? I learned with time, and in writing the book the book Positively 4th Street, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land, mm-hmm. in part writing that book, I learned that the problem was never that I wasn't good enough. The problem was, why did my thoughts and experiences lead me to think I wasn't good enough when in fact all along I was? And it was through my relationship with Jesus Christ that I was able to realize that I was good enough. I was able to realize that all human beings are born in the image of God. We're all good enough. Yet, how common is it for us to think we're not good enough? Mm-hmm. And that's what I hope the book will bring to people, the light. Will show them that the problem is you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. But then I set out to prove to the world. Remember, this happens at an early age. I'm now 67 years old. I'm giving all the wisdom that I was able to garner through the years to help me feel confident, to feel content with who I am. But back then, I was determined to show the world I was good enough. I was going to show Elizabeth and show everybody else. And when I had a chance to excel in an academic setting, boy, did I excel in a way I never knew before. Mm-hmm. However, no amount of achievement or accomplishment could ever erase that feeling of not being good enough. It just didn't happen. I tried. I thought by going to graduate school, by being an exercise physiologist, by teaching at Columbia University, by publishing, by getting involved with the American Medical Association and taking a leadership role there, that would prove to the world that I was good enough. But it never worked. It never worked. But what did work, and here's the main point of my book, is that the only way you're ever going to know you're good enough is and you don't have to prove anything to anybody to know it. You need to treat other people like they're good enough, and they don't have to prove anything to you for you to treat them that way. Mm-hmm. The better you get at doing that, the better you feel about yourself.
Right. Well, it sounds like one of the things that you are kind of mentioning is the golden rule. And I know that you say that the golden rule is one of the foundations of your book. So does that have anything to do with your title of Positively 4th Street?
It absolutely does. Thank you. So you heard me say the way you're going to feel good about yourself is by treating others the way you would like to be treated. And as many of you know, that's golden rule. However, you can come across people who don't like to be treated well. So you wouldn't want them to treat you that way either. And with further discovery, with learning not only from Jesus, but looking at the wisdom of Moses, Muhammad, and Buddha, I was able to formulate more depth to the golden rule than just treat others the way you would like to be treated. I came up with four golden rules, or 4 bases of the golden rule. And when I mention these to my patients or to passersby or to anyone I engage in a conversation, these 4 bases of the golden rule register immediately. People look at me and they say, aha, you're right. So here are those 4 bases of the golden rule. 1, be aware and sensitive to how your actions affect the feelings of others. 2, don't do for others what others can do for themselves. 3, say no and set limits with people who are selfish. Protect yourself. And 4, never judge others to be undeserving of your kindness or generosity. And number 4 is basically saying never judge someone in a way where you wouldn't follow through on those other 3 bases. And what I found is that those 4 bases fit almost any situation that you might find yourself in. They are the key to creating memories about yourself that you'll always enjoy. I went, as a psychiatrist, I tried to figure out, why do people have thoughts? Why do people think about things that upset them so much? Why are people in such an unhappy state of mind? And I realized it's because their thoughts are spin-offs from their memories. So we must have memories that we've created that we don't like. And I discovered that there's only 2 ways to make a memory that doesn't feel good. One is to carry doubt that you're not good enough, and when you don't get the validation you're looking for, that's a memory that doesn't feel good. And the other way to create a memory that doesn't feel good is to act selfishly. Now, the first way to create a memory is a distortion of reality. You are good enough. The problem isn't that you're not good enough. The problem is, why do you think you're not good enough? And the second problem is not following the golden rule. And by following the golden rule, you'll know that you're good enough. So these 4 bases of the golden rule actually fix those 2 errors, those 2 problems that most human beings have, thinking you're not good enough and acting selfishly. When you follow those 4 bases of the golden rule, you fix both problems.
That is so awesome that you are able to put it down that way and to be able to inspire others to keep going. Now, I know that we have a few minutes before we go to break, but I want to be able to make sure that people know where they can pick up a copy of your book, Dr. Joshua. So if you would please, can you remind everyone, where can they get a copy of your book?
So my book, Positively 4th Street, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land, is available on Amazon.com. It is available in hardcover, softcover, and in a ebook form as well.
Smell Good Spa
you know where you
for
can
the
pick
women
up a copy
who are making
of
a
that book.
conscientious
We'll be back
change
right
in
after
their
this.
personal care products, specializing in signature fragrance oils, hand-dipped incense, and wholesome bath and body and personal care products. Smell Good Spa. Use code HELLO25 for 25% off your order. Live good, feel good, smell good wholesomely. SmellGoodSpa.com.
Discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up, even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
Hi everyone, Dr. Angela here. Did you know that Daily Spark is now on Facebook? That's right, you can visit with me at facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I want to know more about what you're thinking. I'd love to know, which interview did you find the most entertaining or the most informative? I want to talk to you, and I want you to be able to talk to me. Simply visit facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for a Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. We are talking to Dr. Joshua Simon today about his book, Positively 4th Street, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land. So, Dr. Joshua, Moses did not stay in Egypt to teach the Egyptians the importance of the golden rule. He did not let his people continue building the pyramids for the Egyptians, even though that's what Pharaoh wanted him to do. We understand that Moses was given the directive by God. He was given a task, and he was expected to carry out that task. How does all of that, when we talk about the historic people and characters of the Bible, how does Moses play into your book? Why is he mentioned?
Well, Moses is mentioned. First of all, Moses was the person who brought us the 10 Commandments. And those 10 Commandments, when we look at those 10 Commandments, they're basically guiding us on how to follow the Golden Rule. Moses, as you said, wasn't going to do for the Egyptians what they needed to do for themselves. And so when you think about those 4 bases that I just spoke of a few minutes ago, Moses provides second base of the 4 bases. Don't do for others what others can do for themselves. He was not going to let the Jews build the pyramids that the Egyptians should build for themselves. Not only that, but you could think that he wasn't going to stay in Egypt to teach the Egyptians the importance of the 10 Commandments. The Egyptians needed to figure that out for themselves as well. So we have that, and then the other bases are also associated with the great figures, spiritual figures of history. So Moses was the first one to come chronologically. The second of the great spiritual leaders is Buddha, and Buddha brought us the 4 Noble Truths. And in those 4 Noble Truths, Buddha asks us to be aware and sensitive to how our actions affect the feelings of others. He speaks of the eightfold path. And in those eightfold paths, he talks about having the right the right thoughts, the right actions, and he goes on in the right, I don't have the list in front of me, but he speaks about having the right concentration, and all of those right speech, all of those things are about being aware and sensitive to how your actions affect the feelings of others. So I attribute the Buddha to first base of the 4 bases of the Golden Rule. And then after Buddha arrives, shortly after Buddha arrives, we hear an 11th commandment from Jesus, that we are to love our neighbors as Jesus loves us. He commands us to do that. And when we think about what does it mean to love our neighbors, it means that we should never judge them to be undeserving of our kindness, never judge them to be undeserving of generosity. Jesus never judges us, Jesus is always available to us. He will never judge, no matter what we've ever done in our life. He will never not make himself available to us for guidance. And the same is true of us towards our neighbors. We should never not be available to our neighbors for help or to set them straight if they are having difficulties or are acting selfishly. It's up to us to say no to them as well. And just as if I am falling short of my commitment to follow the Golden Rule, I want people to point that out to me. I want people to enlighten me that I am not following through with the principles that I hold so dear. So Jesus arrives, and so we now have 3 of those 4 bases covered. And after Jesus, about 6 centuries later, we have the arrival of Muhammad. So Muhammad has the benefit that the world is always aware of the teachings of the Buddha, teachings of Moses, the teachings of Jesus. And he's aware of these things. And he's struggling. Why is everybody fighting everybody? Why is everybody in the Middle East fearful that the tribe next to them is getting ready to invade them? And there's no peace. Everybody has their own god or gods. Everybody has their own different way of worship. And he's wondering, isn't the first commandment that there is only one God? Isn't that our first commandment? So Muhammad is thinking there must be a better way. There must be a better way. And he brings to us what he called the 5 pillars of Islam. And in those 5 pillars of Islam, he teaches people that if you worship God, if you're true to God's words, you will be protected. And he was able to, historically, the accounts of Muhammad is that he was able to protect small groups of people who developed a faith in the one God, and they were able to prevent any neighboring group from taking advantage of them. They were able to set limits and say no with those people around them who may have been stronger, richer, more powerful. With Muhammad and his faith in the one God, he was able to set limits and protect himself and be safe. And so we have the last of the 4 bases of the Golden Rule, the third one being say no and set limits to those who act selfishly, protect yourself. So each one of those great spiritual leaders, Moses, Muhammad, Jesus, and the Buddha, each provide one of the 4 bases to the Golden Rule. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we can feel united, that we all worship that one God. And interestingly, because I come from a background of growing up among atheists, and I can understand why atheists can associate so much hypocrisy with religion, that they don't find that religion is where they want to look. But those people can look to being compassionate. And if you're compassionate the 4 bases of the Golden Rule will make just as much sense to you whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about Judaism is a faith based in action. It's based on doing good deeds. So the way I was brought up, if you do a good deed, and with my, not just brought up, but the way I approach my relationship to God is that if you do a good deed, if you follow those 4 bases of the Golden Rule, you get closer and closer to being in God's company. And whether you believe in God or you don't, if you do good deeds, if you act with compassion, mm-hmm. you are under God's guidance. And even though you won't call it that, you'll call it something else. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's what you do that counts.
Mm-hmm. 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 Now, can you explain why you have been... why do you believe that it was so important for this particular book to be written by you at this moment of now, at this particular time in your life?
Well, this book has already served its purpose for me. If this book never got published, if this book never got seen by other people, it wouldn't matter to me, because I know that for my life to work out, I have everything I need to feel perfectly wonderful right now. There's nothing that needs to happen in the future for to think my life has worked out. And what I learned was that if you focus on what you think you want to happen in the future, it's never going to work out the way you think it will, because anything that keeps you from feeling perfectly wonderful right now will keep you feeling perfectly wonderful in the future. You may, for example, if you come into a large sum of money, you may not worry about little things that you used to worry about, but you'll worry about whether you got the best deal on the house you just bought. You'll worry about other things. So for me, writing this book right now was my way of sharing to the world wisdom and being of service to others. I don't know if I have anything more to add to what's out there. I mean, there are so many books written about how to get closer to God, how to find contentment, how to be happy, how to be mindful. There are books out there. But to me, I think these 4 bases of the Golden Rule express it better than any other way it's been expressed before. So that's my message.
That is so awesome. That is awesome. Well, I have so many times, Dr. Joshua, I have people who are inspired by authors in various ways. And one thing that I like to do is ask those questions that are just about your writing style and what inspires you and how you do a part of what you do, and that is write. So if you don't mind, we're going to kind of change the vein a little bit. So my question to you is this: when you're writing, do you find that you need a certain atmosphere or a certain environment in order to be productive? Does it need to be quiet, or do you prefer to write like in a study as opposed to in your bedroom, or do you want to go to Starbucks? What works best for you?
I'm glad you asked that question about my writing, because when people ask me, how long have you been writing this book? I think to answer that question, I think we need to answer the one I just raised about how long has it taken me to write this book? Well, the answer is 18 years. Okay? 18 years. And the way it started was, remember, I had this pit in my heart. I felt this troubled by the fact that I fell in love, and the person who I fell in love with didn't apparently love me back. And I wondered, what's wrong with me? As it turned out, there wasn't anything wrong with me. But what I started to do was, what brought me comfort? What ideas did I have that brought me comfort? And that was the start of the book. Writing down ideas that made sense to me, writing ideas that brought me comfort. And then when I had about 25 of those ideas, I started to say, let me see if there's a book here. Let me see if I can put these things together in such a way that there's a story, or there's a way to tie all these different ideas together. And that was my first version of the book. Well, each time I started to write, ideas became clearer. I started to come up with more ideas that were better than the ones that I originally wrote down. And I created a whole entirely new book. And then after I wrote that book, more and more ideas kept coming to me till I finally got to the idea of those 4 bases of the Golden Rule. And that was the aha moment. I said, this is the structure. This is the foundation. Everything, every thought that I had, I realized can tie in to those 4 bases of the Golden Rule. And for me, I could be anywhere. I'm the type of person that I can be caught up in my thoughts, and my wife can speak to me 3 times, and it went over my head each 3 times because I'm so focused on what I'm thinking about. So I don't think there's any particular one place. I don't think I'm the best person to say, if you needed to work on a book on a deadline, you should follow the model of Dr. Joshua Simon. I don't think so. Okay? I think, we each have a different way of doing things. And my way is, there are no deadlines. You just do it when the idea strikes you.
Well, Dr. Joshua Simon, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us here this morning and talking about your book, Positively 4th Street, A Baby Boomer's Guide to the Promised Land. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Angela, and I really appreciate you interviewing me and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you as well for spending your moment here with me. I hope that you have enjoyed our time together. I know that I surely have. Well, as always, I leave you with this blessing. May God continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.